We also had bought donkeys. You might think donkeys are something that's common in Zaire or in Congo, but it's, or excuse me, Zambia, but it's not. They're very common in Botswana and South Africa and even Zimbabwe. But they could not cross the Zambezi River Valley. Was very infested with tsetse flies, and horses would get sleeping sickness that's carried by the tsetse fly. And so they didn't come into Zambia very much until recently. And we managed to find donkeys at a Catholic mission down by Lusaka. We bought some, brought them up. We didn't know how to train them well. So there were some people from Michigan who bought us a set of harness, but we didn't even really know how to fit it well. And then we had this couple of farmers from Wisconsin. One you might recognize, he's your current Secretary of Agriculture, Ben Bransel. The other fellow is from Rice Lake United Methodist Church. They were old farmers. They had trained horses, and they knew very well how to train donkeys, so they did a good job. Next. Now we can do our own training on site. This is Sally. She is one of the offspring of those original donkeys. She grew much bigger than her parents because they grew up down by Lusaka where the weather's hotter, drier, the grass is poor. But given proper feed, our donkeys are growing much larger than our original stock. This is Chala's brother, and you know how tall Chala is. This guy's just as tall, at least, as Chala, and his feet aren't dragging on the ground. This donkey, I think, is a full hand higher than its parents. And he came down from Congo to work at our site, and I wasn't sure what I was going to assign him to, and then I realized that donkey had been languishing without any training. So I got out the halter or the bridle that somebody had brought out to us, and it was sitting in the shop not being used, and I said, every day when I get up I want to see you riding this donkey. He had never ridden a donkey before, and I had to convince him he could, and she had to be convinced she could be ridden, but she never bucked him off. She was very gentle, and now she comes to the fence when we come to the fence because she likes the attention, and you know, she'll also maybe get a handful of corn or something. That's when she does well, so she is growing very well. All right, next. This is Andre. He's our shop manager, and he's very, very useful to us. He knows how to weld. He's good at repairing things. As I said, he can break down a diesel engine, rebuild it, and actually make it run. And he's never had, I'm sure he's never even learned the basic physics behind what makes a diesel engine run. But he's learned very well how to adjust the injectors and the compression and so on. Next. Again, we had to develop every bit of management technique, what kinds of plows to use, when to use them, how to plant the maize, how wide to make the rows, and we are constantly experimenting. This year we narrowed our rows on our maize and increased the seeds per hectare. And this has helped us to get a much larger crop this year. It also helps the corn to close in the rows faster, and so it shades out the weeds, so we don't have to struggle so much with the weeds. We try not to use herbicides, so it's important that we use the plants themselves to shade out the weeds. Next. It is a land potentially flowing with milk and honey, but we've got to apply our effort to it. We've just bought a very good Saanen buck, and so we're continually upgrading the quality of our animals. We have organized women's groups in the area. They come in for training. They bring their children. We invite them a day ahead so that they can have a meal featuring goat's milk because they've never tasted milk in their lives. They don't know if it's good or bad, and so they need to be convinced that they can drink it, their children will like it. And so we'll have a meal featuring fresh milk and then probably yogurt for dessert. They stay overnight. In the morning, at 6 o'clock in the morning, they have to be out in the barn to milk the goats. And it's a lot of spilled milk, of course, when you're milking goats. It takes some practice to learn how to make the goat stand still and to get the milk into the pan. But they do it. We take the milk to the house. They see how to filter it, how to prepare it, and then they help us make breakfast. In Lunda culture, they don't eat breakfast. It's not a habit to eat breakfast, but it's something that's very important for them to learn, that they get protein into themselves, get food, good food, energy into themselves, because they have to work very hard. And the best time to work is in the morning, so if they're well fed, they can get more work done in a day. So we try to encourage them to have breakfast. And so we featured, they made their breakfast of oatmeal with oat's milk over it, with bananas in it, and brown sugar. And it makes a very tasty meal. And they also had, I believe, lemonade and so on as an energy drink along with it. Next. There's real problems being in a society where there's no milk. When you think about small children where a mother can no longer breastfeed or a mother dies. We had an instance where a mother died shortly after giving birth to a child. And I was called to the clinic because they thought if we could get her to the hospital in time, they might save her. But she was already dead when we got to the clinic. I brought back the body. I brought back this newborn infant. And I asked the parents, what's going to happen to this baby? And they talked among themselves. They said, well, there's an aunt who can care for the baby, but there's nothing for a baby to eat. And at that point, we offered a liter of milk from our goats and our cows, and for as long as was necessary. And this is the child after a few months. Next. This is Mary today. She continues to grow. She continues to get her family continues to get a liter of milk every day. Her mother, you can see the whole family has improved in health. The mother also looks better, or the aunt, I mean, looks better. And she is growing wonderfully. She's been getting milk now for 6 years. She came and had breakfast with us. She's got a pancake in each hand as she leaves, but doing very well. Next. We now have a couple other orphans as well that we're giving milk to. We tried, this is one of our failures, as the scriptures say, you don't know what's going to succeed, this or that. We tried to build the Kenya top bar hives to improve the keeping of bees in our area, to increase honey production, but we find that our area seems not to be very suitable, or at least it wasn't this year. And so we captured 8 swarms of bees and did a lot of work trying to keep them in the boxes, but they would abscond. And so we'll probably try again next year, but we're going to have to figure out if this is just a one-year problem or if it's a chronic problem, that we might have to move the beehives to a better location. Next.